The people, the headlines, the issues impacting you and your family. This week in Cincinnati on WCPO 9.
Good afternoon and welcome to This Week in Cincinnati. I'm Craig McKee. The start of the school year is almost here for many families across the tri-state. And just as the pandemic turned the end of the school year upside down, the start of the new school year is also filled with much uncertainty. Schools are trying to navigate the desire to get kids both in the classroom with the need to keep everyone safe. And to get some perspective on that from the educator's point of view, I recently spoke on Zoom with the president of the Ohio Education Association. Scott Demaro, president of Ohio Education Association. Thank you so much for joining us. Obviously, it's a critical time right now in the Buckeye State, and I can only imagine between the emails and the phone calls you're receiving, maybe from parents even, and obviously staff members, faculty, teachers, it's probably every single day the phone is ringing and emails are coming in, people just trying to figure out, what are we going to do this fall?
Yeah, there's still a lot of uncertainty about what happens this fall. And frankly, even if school districts have adopted plans for reopening schools, because things seem to keep changing with this virus on a weekly, even on a daily basis, I think there's still a lot of uncertainty, not just what's going to happen when the school year starts, but what's going to happen a couple weeks later when you start seeing outbreaks of the virus among people in our schools. People are concerned about their health. I mean, that's the number one concern that I'm hearing. Of course, teachers across the state of Ohio are eager to get back into in-person instruction with their students if they can. They miss those connections, they miss those relationships. They've been doing all they can to make remote learning as successful as possible, but they don't want to go back unless conditions are safe for them, safe for their kids, safe for their families at home.
And we've seen already, the kind of the fallout, so to speak, as teachers are speaking up and with those concerns. Columbus teachers signed a petition, some 2,700 teachers saying that they have concerns about going back at all. We've had Fairfield County Health Department recommending that kids don't go back at all. So how do you balance when, again, there's not a one-size-fits-all solution right now with this, because there are some counties and some locations where they aren't a level 2, a level 3, or a level 4 by the state's coded system now. They're maybe not even close to even a level 1, but there are other counties who are level 3 and level 4, and they're seeing a spike in cases. So when you have the health department part of this and teachers unions and everything, right, how do you even figure this out? I guess, is there somebody who trumps somebody else? If the health department recommends, say in our area, Hamilton County, Butler, Claremont, if they step forward and say, we don't think this is a good idea, do the school districts have to take that recommendation and say, okay, we have to go to remote learning? How does this really play out?
I think where it works best is if you have good collaborative relationships between local school districts and local health departments. Where we really need clear guidance is from the state. When Governor DeWine announced earlier this month that schools would be able to reopen, there was only one mandate that was issued, and that was a requirement that staff members wear masks. And then there were a lot of other very strong recommendations based on CDC guidance, based on what the Ohio Department of Health had been saying for some time, that were, even with those though, they were left to local school districts to decide how they were going to interpret those recommendations and how they were going to implement them. We believe those public health recommendations need to be mandates. There should be no question about 6-foot social distancing everywhere. There should be no question about the need for students to wear masks in order to make sure that everybody's safe. There should be no question about the need for strict protocols when it comes to removing people that are symptomatic or exposed and keeping them separate from everybody else until it's safe to bring people back together, on hand washing protocols, on sanitation protocols. So we believe that there really needs to be much more clear, enforceable, scientific, data-driven guidance that guides what happens here. I think the governor missed an opportunity when, on the same day that he announced going back to school, he also announced the color-coded warning system. There should be some connection between the two. Many local health departments and local school districts are making decisions based on their whether they're level red or level purple, and I think they're wise. The Fairfield County Board of Health's decision to say schools shouldn't go back in session in person until they're past that, I think makes a great deal of sense. I would hope that other local health departments and local school districts will follow suit, but we really do need stronger guidance from the state.
You know, a lot of the school districts are still trying to figure it out on their own. Some school districts locally here actually rolled out and said, we're going to go with this plan. And then the next week they said, nope, we're not going to go with that plan anymore. We're going to roll back and do something else. What kind of a directive or suggestion, perhaps from your office, are you sending out to school districts to figure this out? Because there's obviously a time crunch here. The first day of school right around the corner.
Well, we have been providing our local unions across the state with guidance for how they can bargain over these issues. There's a lot of working condition issues that are embedded in our collective bargaining agreements. So there needs to be negotiation between school district administrations and local unions over a lot of these conditions. We're having more problems if, there's people that are basing their decisions more on the politics than on the science, or just taking a top-down approach. I think that's where we tend to have conflict. But everywhere, I think there is a recognition that because things continue to change, adaptability, flexibility, I think is the watchword. And so even if there's a plan for going back to some version of in-person learning, it's especially important that every district has the plan for how do you transition back to remote learning. Because I expect there's going to be a lot of schools that might open in late August, that by the middle of September, if you see outbreaks, they're going to be asking people to learn from home. And so we have to make sure that we have plenty of time for preparation and planning. We recently had a conversation with a large group of our local presidents from around the state. More than half of them said that their districts had made the decision to delay the opening date for the school year. I think that's a wise move.
When we come back, we'll speak more about parents' concerns and those students who haven't adjusted well to remote learning. Welcome back to This Week in Cincinnati. Today, we're taking a closer look at the effort to get students back to school with all the challenges caused by the pandemic. Recently, I spoke with the president of the Ohio Education Association, Scott DeMuro, about that issue. Among the big concerns many parents have is how much their children are really learning when they aren't in the actual classroom. I spoke with him on Zoom from one of our remote studios.
Parents have a lot of concerns about everything involved. While traditional classrooms and that education process is something we're familiar with, remote learning is obviously something new, and it takes time to adapt to. And some students just can't do that. Actually, I have a friend, not my friend, it's my son's friend, who he goes to school with. This was a straight A student with in-person classroom studies, straight A, AP classes, the whole 9 yards. Goes to remote learning, and his grades slip into the D category. And it just makes you wonder, how do you continue the success of education? How do these schools continue to make sure that they can keep these students on the right path when not all kids can learn in this fashion?
Yeah, no, we understand there is no substitute for that kind of in-person instruction. That's why I think most students, even for years, we've had remote learning options out there, and that hasn't been, what the majority of students and families have chosen. So we understand that there's fallbacks. One of the things that we know from the experience of the spring is we had to turn on a dime. We had 2 days to prepare for remote learning for the last 2.5 months of the school year. We've had a lot longer to prepare for this, and that's where hopefully we learn the lessons, and then at every school district, teachers and administrators are working together to see what worked, what didn't work, what are the things that we need to do better to make sure that students like your son's friend don't fall through the cracks. It's also critical, as we're thinking about this, that we have to address fundamental inequities in the system. We know that remote learning is a lot harder if kids don't have the technology devices, if they don't have the high-speed internet access at home, and very critically, if they don't have parental support to make sure that they're successful with that. And so we need resources. We need resources if we're going to go back to make sure that conditions are safe. We need resources if we're going to continue remote learning to make sure that we're really addressing those needs, especially of students from families that just don't have the kind of at-home support that is otherwise really important.
Well, when you talk about that, you have family members who are going off to work, and now the student is there by themselves, perhaps going through the learning process, or a parent has to take time off, or what have you. So it's an interesting time all around, and we're all learning as we go along here as parents. The other issue that parents bring up, though, those who have special needs children in special education classes, what's the solution there? And obviously, it's easy to say, well, we're going to make sure we have in-person classes there. But again, if somebody tests positive, you're right back to remote learning. What are the challenges that the state's seeing? What are the challenges that you're seeing in the districts for this?
Yeah, there was a fair amount of flexibility that was provided during the spring, from the federal government, because special ed law is federal law, that allowed some grace. But we know that was one of the biggest concerns that I hear from educators all the time is, how do we keep up with the needs of our special needs students? There aren't easy answers to that question. I think districts that are placing a priority on that question as they're making back to school plans are doing the right thing. But again, taking time, do some planning, again, might mean additional resources, maybe additional teachers, additional paraprofessionals who are able to provide that kind of one-to-one support for students as best we can.
Do you have any final thoughts here for parents out there who may be watching? Obviously, faculty members, teachers, they're already in the know. They're in the loop on the emails and the conference calls and everything. What do you say? Kind of final thoughts to the parents out there navigating this fall?
Well, the first thing is I know that all of us share an interest in doing what's best for our kids. I know that we can't fully reopen the economy unless parents can rest assured that if they're going back to work in a normal kind of environment, that their kids are going to be safe at school. We're all on the same page on that. One thing that parents can be doing to really help set us up for success, to help get us past this crisis, is to start modeling those expectations now for what we're going to need from students when the school year starts. If anybody's going back to in-person learning, we know that mask wearing is going to be critical. It's critical that kids are getting in the habit of wearing masks now. I think it's totally possible, but it can't just be a shock to the system on the first day of school. Parents should model mask wearing, and they should encourage their students to start wearing masks now. For one, it'll lower the spread of the virus between now and the beginning of the school year, but it'll also help keep everybody safe once school starts.
All right, Scott DeMauro, President of Ohio Education Association, thank you so much for kind of keeping us in the loop here. I know you have a heck of a job ahead of you, and I know all the faculty members and teachers, the main goal is to keep the students as safe as possible. I know you and your team and everyone across the state of Ohio and the country, for that matter, will be doing everything they can to make sure that they can achieve that goal, hopefully.
Absolutely. Thank you, Craig. Appreciate the time.
We'll be right back.
Welcome back. $700 million. That's how much local hospitals have gotten in federal stimulus awards aimed at helping them through the coronavirus pandemic. So why are some of those facilities cutting jobs while others are not? In this Rebound investigation, I-Team reporter Dan Monk looked into that question. It turns out the money comes with few strings attached.
Were you running and doing stuff during this time?
When the pandemic hit, athletic trainer Nicole Jones thought she was headed for the unemployment line, but her bosses at St. Elizabeth Healthcare had another idea.
It was a huge relief.
The Northern Kentucky hospital chain says it offered all of its athletic trainers full pay if they agreed to be reassigned. Jones transitioned to a temperature screener, hospital cleaner, and inventory clerk.
A sigh of relief, weight off of our shoulders, knowing that the hospital had a plan for us.
I think our morale is unbelievably high.
St. Elizabeth CEO Garen Colvin says the hospital system is bouncing back quickly because it was able to prevent layoffs during the pandemic. He credits a healthy balance sheet and $150 million in stimulus payments.
The stimulus has been a game changer on a lot of fronts. We knew that we were going to have the financial sustainability to make it through the crisis.
The I-Team is tracking the local impact of the $2 trillion CARES Act by tracing how much money finds its way into local unemployment checks, small business loans, and payments to hospitals like the St. Elizabeth Edgewood campus behind me. Our analysis of federal stimulus data shows 6 major hospital systems in northern Kentucky and southwest Ohio received $689 million so far. That's $483 million in advance payments from Medicare and $206 million in grants from the Provider Relief Fund. But rules for this stimulus from the federal government do not require hospitals that receive it to preserve jobs. Instead, the Medicare payments are intended to increase cash flow to providers, and the grants are supposed to help hospitals prevent, prepare for, and respond to coronavirus.
The money that went to healthcare providers really didn't have a lot of strings attached.
Karen Schwartz is a health policy expert with the Kaiser Family Foundation, a nonprofit that provides research and analysis on the healthcare industry.
Hospitals were free to make decisions around layoffs, even if they accepted the money.
The I-Team has discovered 3 hospital systems in southwest Ohio did just that. They got millions of dollars in stimulus money, but also made the most severe cuts to employee positions or salaries. For example, UC Health got $169 million in grants and advance payments, more than any local hospital system. A spokeswoman confirmed UC Health cut payroll expenses by 20% in all non-clinical departments by requiring people to take paid and unpaid leave. Top executives also took pay cuts of up to 30%, but she says the cost-cutting and stimulus only helped us recover a portion of our financial loss. Mercy Health got more than $128 million in stimulus proceeds for its 5 local hospitals, but that didn't prevent furloughs of up to 90 days for 3,000 employees in 7 states. The furloughs ended June 30. Mercy Health won't say how many local employees were impacted. A spokeswoman says the Mercy Health Foundation contributed $60 million to an associate hardship fund to provide restorative pay to furloughed associates and those on reduced hours. TriHealth got $88.6 million in stimulus awards, yet CEO Mark Clement announced the permanent elimination of 440 positions in June. TriHealth provided the I-Team with a statement he wrote to employees that says, in part, TriHealth lost nearly $100 million from March to May and needed to act now to avoid continued operating losses in excess of $10 million each month. So how did St. E avoid such cuts to northern Kentucky hospitals when its Cincinnati rivals could not?
I don't think it's fair to the Cincinnati hospitals to ask, why can a Kentucky hospital do it?
Colvin says northern Kentucky had fewer COVID-19 cases than southwest Ohio and reopened its surgery centers sooner.
But I don't think Cincinnati hospital should be looked at negatively, because they did absolutely the right thing.
Did he want you to make your times today?
Meantime, Nicole Jones returned to her regular St. E job at Connor High School July 1st.
So again, grateful that working for a hospital system that kept me whole.
Dan Monk, WCPO 9, I-Team.
Welcome back, everyone. It was quite a week for Ohio Governor Mike DeWine. Thursday afternoon, he tested positive for COVID-19. He was given the test as part of the protocol before a planned meeting with President Trump in Cleveland. That was canceled because of the test result. DeWine then provided another sample, which was run through 2 different machines. Both came back negative. State health officials say the second and third PCR tests are more accurate than the antigen test the governor was first given. DeWine says the vast majority of COVID-19 tests given in Ohio have been PCR tests. Great Parks of Hamilton County did a U-turn this week and pulled its levy from the November ballot. The park board voted last month to ask voters for $1.8 mil levy, which would be in addition to the $1 mil levy that passed in 2016. Park officials say they need the money for improvements and to make up for lost revenue. But the park board decided this week there wasn't enough public support for the issue. We want your opinion about any of the stories you see on WCPO 9 News. Call our Feedback Friday hotline. It's 513-852-4998 or visit WCPO.com/feedbackfriday to submit a video. Anchor Craig McKee shares your thoughts every Friday night at 6. And that is This Week in Cincinnati for this Sunday. Join us for breaking news, weather, and sports at 6 and 11 tonight. on WCPO 9 News. Plus, we're always updating your headlines on WCPO.com.